we're actually doing possibly what might be referred to as a part two. Because last time we talked about touchpapers and fireworks and things that go bang. And of course, that's still kind of going on a little bit. Well, in this part of the world, anyway. Actually, in this part of the world, it's always going on. But we're talking about holding steady. Because when after the big bangs and damp squibs, we might actually have changed our behaviours. Or not. So we want to know how to keep holding steady instead of just letting it all drift away. So in the meantime, while you're trying to work out what I just said, we'll introduce ourselves. Jennifer.
Hello, I am Jennifer Jakowski. I am in Canada. I'm a registered psychotherapist and holistic healer, and I journey home with people to their authentic self in whatever fashion that journey takes.
Willie.
Hi, I'm Willie Nichol. I live in Scotland, as you can probably tell from my accent. I'm a former police officer, former corporate security manager, and now I'm a personal development and mindset coach. I help men who have lost their mojo find it again.
Angela.
I'm Angela. I'm a kinesiologist, a coach, and a trainer. More I'm sure will come with that later. But I work with people who are dealing with whatever's going on in their lives right now, whether it's all the baggage that they've been carrying around for years and they don't know whether they need it. And if they don't need it, they don't know how to put it down. Or they just want to feel better about whatever's going on for them. That's where I work at the moment.
And I'm Leslie Marsh. And I like to mix things up a little bit sometimes. So I'm thinking mind methodology is probably a good title that I'm going to stick with for a while. It might change. However, it does mean that basically what I'm doing is thinking about thinking, and how we think actually shows us how we're going to behave. And that behaviour is what we're going to discuss tonight, or the potential for that behaviour, shall we say. Because we're talking about change, and we're always talking about change, particularly towards the end of the year and the beginning of the year, because that's when things do change. Although it happens all the time. We have changing seasons. Well, some of us do. And we have changing times during the day. So when you think about it, there's not much point in being against the idea of change. But it throws up so much muck, shall we say. Let's keep it clean, shall we? It throws up a lot of muck. And mud sticks. And when it sticks, it can be very difficult to get it to move away from where it is. Because there's always a little tiny stain that can say, yeah, that was the one that happened. Oh, yeah, look at that. Look at that. Do you remember that? Basically enough, there's one day of the year that it tends to actually come into its own. Jennifer, what do you think about that?
Well, there are so many things that are coming up for me as you're sharing. And, we talked about igniting change, and here we are looking at, the holidays. And so often we return home, if you will, for the holidays. We get back around family and things like that. And as we shared last time, some of the things that come up, some that we face when we change, are people not appreciating the fact that we've changed or accepting the fact that we're different. And we often may find ourselves falling back into old patterns of behavior because they're familiar, not necessarily because they're how we want to be in those situations. And so part of, what's coming up for me as we talk about this is, how do we recognize when those old patterns are being triggered or ignited in us? And what is it that we need to do to be able to, one, notice it, and then two, make a decision to not fall back into those patterns?
Well, that's a bit like losing your mojo, isn't it? It's, it can be a case of you get so used to being in the non-mojo space that it can be difficult to actually see yourself on the other side of that.
Very much so. The thing about mojo is you can't walk into a supermarket and buy a jar of it, but you sure as hell know when you don't have it. And
Mm.
it's a kind of gradual process where you can't really be bothered. You experience a bad case of can't be arsed itis. There's the old saying that there are only two things certain in life: death and taxes. I would add a third, in fact, I'd probably add a lot more. Change. That is an absolute certainty in life.
Mm.
There will always be change. And we have a choice whether we go with the change or stay stuck the way we are. And if we're talking about the festive period and talking about Christmas Day, and you might meet people you haven't seen for a long time, and you might think, my goodness, they've changed.
Mm.
And they are totally unaware of it. They don't think they've changed, but you think they've changed. It's a lot about perception. We all like to think that we are open to change. We embrace change. We're enthusiastic about change, but we aren't really. We don't like change. We like things to stay the way they are or the way they were. And that's a sure way of being stuck and losing your mojo. So if change is there, have a go at it. What's the worst that can happen?
Probably nostalgia, because isn't that what it actually is, the little drop of poison that goes into the cup during the thing? This is how it used to be, and why isn't it that way now? Angela, what do you think?
It's an interesting one because there's all that change aspect and whatever it was that popped into my head popped straight back out again because I had a really good answer. But the other thing that I was pondering as well as Jennifer was talking, yes, we've got that point of we don't want to fall into the habit of being our old selves because that's what we're used to in that space. But there's also that element of sometimes we feel as if we're doing it deliberately to smooth over the impact of our changes with the people that were around. So that Granny or Auntie Jean or whoever it is isn't offended or isn't upset that you are not still in the box that they expect you to be in, whatever that box may be. And I think that's a big factor as well that as people we like to not, especially at that time of year as well when there's tempers and stresses already, we don't necessarily want to rock the boat and we don't want to add more stress and more challenge. We could have even been told by a parent or a sibling or a spouse, don't go there this weekend or don't go
Mm.
there on that day. Just go back into who you were before and we'll revert back to your new you afterwards because we don't want to upset anyone and they won't understand. And I guess there's that element of at what point are you then not being authentic to who you are and to the work that you have done? And at what point is it okay to, in some cases, I guess, turn the light down a little bit?
Hmm. It's interesting because when you're saying that, I'm thinking of the duvet coming out of the packet,
It's very
and how
difficult to
you
go back
can
in.
never stuff that duvet or that sleeping bag back in that packet because it was all pressured in and
Yeah.
condensed and really, really squished in there. And then suddenly you've decided to just go pop and it's going, hello, look at me. I am all bright, shiny new, and I am in your face.
And
And
I think that there is that element that we can't go back to where we were, but we can pretend for a little bit. And but then what does that do to our psyche? And what
yeah,
does it do to
yeah,
our self-worth and our self-belief?
yeah.
And what does that do from the perspective of our relationships with others if we feel as if we have to pretend to be someone different for them to accept us and
This
to
is the
love
idea,
us?
though. This is the idea also, though, of other people making stories for someone else's opinion. It's
Right.
like it happened in our family at one point where um, one of the family left their husband and was getting a divorce. And Grandad was not to be told because it would upset him too much. But that was an opinion. It wasn't a fact because it was just a case of, you know, okay, then she turns up at Christmas and with no husband in tow or a new boyfriend. what's Granda going to think then? Would it not be best to just kind of lay the foundation and say, oh, there's trouble there, this is not going to work?
But perhaps not do it on Christmas Day. So actually
Exactly.
tell them in advance.
Yeah.
So we talk about that as entrainment. So we're entrained to whatever else other people want us to be. And that's not our story, and it's not our baggage,
No.
and we don't need to carry it.
This is it, though, isn't it, Willie? Because the module losing has got to do with you haven't got enough space anymore to carry your module. You've got to put it down somewhere and you forget where it is.
Something like that, yes. My wife still has Christmas decorations of her mother's, who's now passed away, and these have to come out and be put on this Christmas tree, right? Because it's tradition, and we are kind of hidebound by tradition, and we don't want to change that because it's familiar, it's comfortable, it's uplifting, if you like. A very quick story about change. I had a friend called Jim, who sadly is no longer with us, and when I decided to become a coach, he told me I was an idiot, basically. You'll never make any money at it, you'll crash and burn, etc., etc. And we were out having a beer on a Friday evening, and I get quite annoyed about it, right? And he challenged me by saying, "So you're the new guru coach guy, and you're getting pissed off." I said, "Well, I thought you might have been supportive. We've known each other for many years." And when I went home, told my lovely wife, and she immediately identified the problem, which was I was changing in front of his eyes. I was no longer the old Willie he knew, right? And my wife said, "He's afraid." Why is that? He's afraid he's going to lose as a friend because you're changing and you might leave him behind and he'll be lost. Hence the reason for his outburst. And so I had to change my attitude, which was, I'm not going to bother with that arsehole again, right? And I thought, that's very uncharitable, right? Now that my intuitive lady wife had explained it to me, I let it go. And I was changing, and he didn't like it, but he had to put up with it. Because authenticity and being yourself and finally coming out of my shell and telling Jim and the rest of the world, this is who I am. And then learning to say, if you don't like it, tough.
Interesting. I was just having a conversation with someone about authenticity and finding it in yourself, because we really have to get through all the other people's ideas of our identity, who we are, who we're meant to be. And the fact that a lot of people think that because you're like Joe Schmo from around the corner, how the hell do you think you can have a purpose in life? And this is it. There are so many people now that are finding that. And Jennifer, you must be aware of so many people coming to you for that issue. How can I be authentic when nobody else wants to know that identity that I embrace?
Absolutely. I often talk about clients. There was a story I read a while ago, and it explained how whenever we're interacting with another person, it's very rare that we are completely present and open to seeing the other person as they see who they are. And so the way that the story unfolded is that here I am, and I sit here with my little marionette of me and my little marionette of you, and we're having a quite a lovely conversation. And then you're sitting there with your marionette of yourself and your marionette of me, and you're having your own lovely conversation. But we're not actually interacting because we're only seeing ourselves and the other through our filter. And it is such a different thing to be able to be in a space where I can sit here with open curiosity and go, tell me more. Tell me about you. Help me to understand how you see you. And then have you hold that space for me. But we don't do that because we're so unaware of the fact that we even have this filter on in the first place.
It can be. I'm always banging on about expectations in that bag that we carry around that we don't tell anybody. They're supposed to just know. And I think that a lot of that, particularly at this time of year, the expectation of what this is supposed to be puts such a pressure on every single person that some of them will just go off and not do anything. Some of them will drive themselves to insanity trying to make it perfect for everybody and do everything because they're doers. And some people are talkers, and some people are huggers, and some people aren't. And, who do I sit next to who at where and things just so that nothing will go wrong? And yeah, all of that is trying to control the wind because there's no, yeah, and there was some of that as well with the Brussels sprouts, but there is no way that we can hang on to that control because people will just be people. And this idea of a perfect Christmas is just that it's not even a fairy tale, because fairy tale, well, actually it is, because fairy tales are quite grim. So yeah, it's not the happy ever ending type of fairy tale, it's the holy shit what happened there fairy tale.
And
And
then gives you keeping it clean.
the hell, shit can be clean when it comes from horses. So basically it's a case of, how do we hold it steady all the way through without making ourselves absolutely exhausted, emotionally just done,
And
and get
miserable.
out the other side? Sorry, what did you say?
I said, and miserable. So we're
Yep.
exhausted, we're emotional, we're miserable because we're not being ourselves.
And you're, if you like, pandering to the requests of different people with different wants and needs and whatnot. I remember with my first wife, letting that out there, we hosted Christmas dinner. I think there was 12. We didn't have a huge house, and it was absolute carnage. Right? Trying to run about, fixing drinks and making sure that the food was okay, and is old Auntie Jenny able to get out the chair and whatever, right? And I swore I would never ever do it again. Right? I would
How
never
long did
host
that
it.
last for, Willie?
It lasted because
Okay.
we either went out or we did it in kind of smaller chunks, as it were. But I just thought, I'm a rough, tough copper. I could do anything. This was absolutely. I thought, no, not doing that again. So there's a lot of pressure, right? You're under enormous pressure, and this is supposed to be a happy day and festive, etc. So why on earth would you put yourself through that? And there's a little fly flying about in my room here, which is annoying the hell out of me. So excuse me, but Christmas Day, yes, do what you want to do. Have a nice time, family, friends, whatever. But don't put yourself under pressure, right? Don't change your routine too much just to try and fit in and please everybody, because we all know you can't please everybody.
Mm. You got to please yourself, basically.
Well, that's okay. We'll come and go a wee bit, right? But you can't please everybody, so why not just admit that, take the pressure off?
It's
Yeah.
kind of
And
difficult now these days as well, isn't it? Because there's less communication in the house as far as being sitting at a table together. I think that there was something recently on television that was saying that the biggest idea of the dinner these days was not a turkey, it was a certain brand of fast food that has a lot to do with some kernel in a chicken.
Ah,
So yeah, I mean, whatever burns your candle, you know what I mean? So
Can't say I've ever done turkey, and I think it's one of those, as we've talked about already, it's those traditions, and we're a nation, and nations and a planet of traditions, whatever that might be. Who said it had to be a turkey? Where did that come from? Who said it had to be a ham? Who said you had to alternate them every year? There's so many different things that are set up. And I avoid turkey like the plague at Christmas. I just choose I'm not doing it because why do I have to pander to some tradition that's got nothing to do with me?
I used to like goose. We used to have goose.
Never tried that.
I actually, mum and dad used to have a capon.
Do you even know what that is?
It's a male chicken.
So it's not a cape on. Right, okay.
No, it's not a capon. Now, as soon as I said that, I thought somebody's going to come up with that one. It had to be you.
Well, I've been brought up in a vegetarian household, so these things are
Yeah,
never been part of my Christmas Day
this is the
tradition.
other thing. I mean, what happens when you've got vegetarians, fruitarians, vegans, and all that? It's a case of basically probably what we did at our wedding. Bring your own.
Or as Willie mentioned, a Chinese takeaway because the Chinese restaurants typically tend to be open at Christmas or
Well,
Indian.
there is that. My brother-in-law before he married his second wife. It was his turn to do the Christmas thing. And he said, we'll be having a Chinese takeaway. And I remember because I had to drive him to said Emporium, where he'd already ordered said takeaway. And we went to my mother-in-law's flat to eat it because his was too far away. So that was him getting out of his responsibility to provide Christmas dinner by ordering a Chinese.
But see, that's a change that could be accepted.
Yeah, absolutely. My family used to do turkey every year, and it was very traditional, big meal. And we got to a point where my grandmother said, I don't want to cook, but I don't want anybody else cooking either. And then she made the decision that from that point on, we were having Chinese food as our Christmas dinner meal. And that became the new tradition. And admittedly, some members of the family were like, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean we're not having turkey? Whereas others embraced it. And I think that, again, that comes back to our own perception of what that shift means that determines how we receive it.
I mean, traditionally in Scotland, also, Christmas Day is not the one. It is not the day.
No.
It's New Year's Eve is the one we go hell for leather at, with black buns and steak pies and interesting
Even
things.
that seems to have shifted, and we seem
Yeah,
to now do it collectively. It seems that Christmas is now the bigger one, but that never used to be the tradition in Scotland.
no. And then that's a whole kind of thing coming in from television and Disney, isn't it?
Well,
And
just like we've
Dickens.
got Black
Let's face
Friday
it,
this week. Was
Dickens.
it next week? We've got Black Friday, and well, by the time this comes out, it'll be like the week before. But that's not something we do in the UK. So why are we
No.
doing sales for Black Friday when we don't do Thanksgiving? It's bizarre.
Yeah, but because it's money. It's consumerism. It's the competition. I remember the January sales when it was absolute bloody carnage.
Or Boxing Day sales in Scotland.
Boxing Day sales, yeah, in Scotland. And you would have like so many people standing outside of a shop. It was like George Square enhanced. All these people sitting out there waiting to just kill anybody in their path to get to some one thing that they didn't really need, they don't really want, just so they can say, do you know what I had to do to get this?
It's the attraction of the cost being 50% of what it was the day before, and they've got a bargain. And everyone loves a bargain. So
This,
the
this,
Christmas, sorry, the sales are a kind of tradition in themselves. I
mm,
went and I got this lovely sweater, which only cost me 50 quid. Did you need another sweater? No, it's only 50 quid though. It was 100
yeah.
quid yesterday. So that's, I think, the attraction. Traditions are nice, if not slavishly followed. Right?
And the thing that gets me though is why is it that people don't realize if they can sell it at that price on that day, how come they don't sell it at that price all the time? Because they're still making money out of it.
They're not
Yes, a
making
very
that
valid
much.
point.
It's
And it's
just,
interesting to see how all of the holidays have switched in terms of their origin to where they are now, right? You talk about
mm,
that consumerism and how that's become kind of what the focus is of the holidays, whereas Boxing Day originally was a day of charity and giving, right? And then it became a day of sales. It's just interesting to see where we've come. And, again, we talk about tradition and the ability to change tradition. And I think in a lot of ways, being able to be open to change is a wonderful thing. But there are certain traditions, if we go back far enough, that'd be really wonderful if we could go back to those, right?
yeah, I think it would be wonderful if we could actually go back to the idea that it's seasonal and it should not be actually thought about or in the shops in July or June as it was this year. It should be the end of November.
It's you.
Yeah,
Somebody else has decided, actually, I'm going to make money off this.
yeah. And then somebody else bought into the idea. Mind you, I am a last minuter because I just don't, I forget about it. I just right over my head. Don't even go there. I usually worked during it. So, tough. But it's kind of for anything, for clothes, for anything that I have to do that's different, or go to a party or something like that. The party will be in an hour's time. I'll be in the shop looking for a dress, or or a pair of shoes or something that and I
Is
used to be
that
able
is
to do
that
it.
you holding steady? That's your tradition that you've got to leave everything to the last minute, and that's you being your authentic you.
Last minute Leslie is something that I was being called before. Yes. It's like my sister was called the late missus, but she was always late. And yeah, I suppose I picked that kind of habit up.
So do you know that's just an interesting one. I'm not brilliant on timekeeping. I've got no problems admitting to the fact that I'm not brilliant on timekeeping. However, on those days that I'm on time or I'm early, just talking about the whole what people expect, I do not stop getting comments.
Mm.
Oh, you're early. What time do you call this? Wow, you're here. So where's my incentive to continue being early to make you feel better, that you feel as if I'm pandering to your needs and whims about what your theory on time is, if you're then still going to give me grief? And I just it popped into my head as to what we've been talking about. It is that concept of I am changing the way I run, and I run late. I'm fine. I run late. Everyone knows that. But because I then did make the effort to pander to somebody else's timekeeping needs, I arrived on time or even 5 minutes early and got nothing but grief for being early.
Yeah, people give you stick for doing something that they wanted you to do in the first place, and then they give you stick for it. How would you be expected to do it again?
So where's the
What are
where's
you
the
going to do it?
incentive to continue doing something based on somebody else's needs and wants
We're
when we
talking about
could just be
rewards.
authentic ourselves? There isn't a reward
No,
in
exactly.
most
But we're
cases.
talking we're talking about reward and effort, basically. And you would expect, one would expect, people would expect someone who made the effort to get in early or on time should be rewarded by, oh, it's so great to see you. Well, come in.
Oh, I don't know.
Instead of,
I don't want the patronizing either, thank you. I just want to
well,
arrive and not have a
I
big
wasn't,
deal
I
about
wasn't sort of
it.
like saying patronizing, because sometimes it's good to see people that you don't patronize them for it. You know, I do occasionally have the notion that it's good to see somebody and say it.
Okay.
Not often, I must admit.
So I think that was my shocker, the fact that you were being quite um
Yeah.
positive on
You see
that.
this, your
But
perceptual position again. You see, it's perceptual positions. Because I usually am like, all right, okay. You're there, fine.
but it was
There
that
is something
concept.
to
So
be,
pandering's the wrong word, but it is that concept of I'm trying to do something to help other people out
Yeah, yeah.
and fit myself into their framework.
Mhm.
And even that's then not
no, but there is
comfortable.
something to be said for like for honoring that if somebody does that for you. To say, hey,
Mhm.
thanks so much for putting in that effort. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Rather than, wow, and all the rhetoric that goes with it.
My favorite bugbear is to have a nice day. Is that an order?
I am a nice day.
Is that an order? Is that a command? No. Do I have to? I was until, you know, I just don't, thank you very much. Goodbye. It's fine in a shop. Why does somebody have to tell you to have a nice day? Because they're not having one, obviously. And it's said through gritted teeth. Have a nice day.
But perhaps it's partly a habit, it's partly a tradition, it's partly what's expected and be given a script to say.
It was never a bloody tradition.
Not
It
here,
might be now.
but elsewhere it may have started that way and it's moved. Just like we've talked about how other things are moving and we're taking on things from other countries. It could be that it's that aspect. Maybe they do. They're just hoping that you have a nice day. And the I hope you has just dropped off the sentence.
You see, you just said to me about what I was saying to you. So there's your perceptual position again.
So all I was commenting was that it's maybe come from somewhere.
Yeah. So anybody who says to you, "Oh my goodness, you're early. What happened?" is possibly just surprised and glad to see you, but you're taking it like it's they're having you giving you trouble.
Yeah. And you know my friends, and you are one of my friends, and you do know that you do not do it in
Well,
jest.
I
You
don't
do
really, I
it
don't really do it.
to,
I don't really do it. I
well,
sort of like,
yeah.
okay,
It's so fascinating though, because you think about like the dynamics of family and things like that, right? Whereas we're talking about like, going home for the holidays and this kind of like knowing exactly how to push each other's buttons and to know exactly what to do to get the other person to get set off and all of those things. And I talk so often with clients about how the way that somebody responds has very little to do with what the other person's doing and what's going, but it has more to do with what's going on inside of them. And so, to a simple like have a nice day, the way one person responds to that versus the way the other person responds to that. Yes, it could be if the person's going, have a nice day versus have a nice day. But also it could be, whatever's going on inside of us. And so to any comment that comes our way, knowing specifically that family knows exactly how to say it and what to say in order to get your goat, right? To be able to kind of go, I know what you're doing. Okay.
yeah. I
Okay.
must admit, but my old boss, he had this thing about smiling. You must always smile when you're on reception, particularly when you're talking to the clients. You must always smile. And I looked at him and I said, even when we've just put their animal down, am I supposed to smile inanely and say, "How very nice to see you. Have a nice day. Give me so much money because your animal's dead now"? And I said, that you cannot blanket this. There has to be some reasoning behind it. You have to have some empathy or sympathy for the person and say, you can be patronizing and go, "Oh, such a shame," and all the rest of it. It's like Uriah Heep to give you money. But basically, it's a case of you have to play it the way the energy is flowing. And yeah, oh, there's one thing that I have to say. Pandering has nothing to do with pandas, giant or otherwise. It, it has been known to be uh, linked to some other way that Willie would have known in the old days as a charge.
Yes, but the old version of pandering, we won't go into that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you
Um,
see, this is another change, the way that we use language and the way that we actually decide what's happening and where it's happening. And this is it. How do we hold steady with all that sea of change that's around us?
I think maintaining an open mind's got a lot to do with it. So,
Mm,
a lovely lady at the checkout when I was in the supermarket, playing Christmas songs, of course,
mm,
that on repeat. Oh, God Almighty! And I felt sympathy for her because she's got to sit and listen to this shit all day, right?
mm.
And for the next 4 weeks or whatever, right?
At
And
least now it's more than just a CD length.
oh
It used to
gosh,
be a 45-minute CD on repeat. They've now got a little bit more music to
they,
choose
they,
from.
they, they have. And I remember one supermarket saying, "Do not change the music." Head office does that. Right? We don't have any control of the music. Anyway, this one lady always says you're very pleasant, smiles, and depending on the time of day, she's told me earlier on, have a nice evening. And I think she meant it, right? And I said something like, enjoy the rest of your shift, or I hope it's not too busy, or something like that, right? And it was a pleasant exchange of pleasantries, as it were, right? So in the context, there was nothing wrong with it. But you can go into stores and they say, have a nice day. And it is because they've been taught, which every time you say goodbye to a customer, say, have a nice day. And it just comes out like that, bang. There's no thought or feeling or genuine intent in it. And that's what gets in your goat.
Yeah, definitely. Because you know it's not real.
Yeah.
But then how much of that is when you meet somebody in the street and you say, and that you maybe know and you say, hi, how are you? Are they actually expecting you to answer that question truthfully, or are they expecting you to say, I'm all right, how are you?
Of course, nobody wants you to turn around and say that,
So how's
that
that any
you,
different to them having their rote answer of, have a nice day?
Well, basically, when somebody says, "How are you?" in the middle of the street, and you say, "Yes, I'm fine, thank you very much," it's because you're not going to keep them there for 5 hours while you trip over everything that happened to you in the last 2 days,
So why bother asking the question?
because that was the polite thing to do in the Victorian times.
So the polite thing to do now in these shopkeeper times is to say, have a nice day.
Eh.
I think, Jennifer, you
I'm
made
going
it
to
a
say
great.
it. I'm going to say it now. Ah, humbug.
I think, Jennifer, you totally hit the nail on the head. It's those buttons. We know what buttons are going to get pushed. We know who's going
Mm.
to push the buttons. But it's how do we rise above it? So whether it's holding steady or rising above it, it's the same kind of context of I know that they're going to say something about this, or I expect someone's going to comment on that, or my grandfather didn't like it whenever I coloured my hair because it was just I'd ruined it because it wasn't the colour I was born with. I have no idea what colour it is underneath all the colour current dye at the moment, but that's beside
Well,
the point. But
this
it's
wasn't the colour I was born with either, but it's actually natural.
exactly. However, you know that you're going to get certain comments and certain people are going to say certain things. So how do you hold yourself to that point of not just snapping back and saying, well, looks like you've put weight on, or what happened to your hair, or whatever the comment is that's going in your head? How do we silence that and maybe not allow it to come out of our mouth when we're thinking it in that knee-jerk reaction time?
It's learning to take the jockey off the horse and not letting the horse have its head. I think that's it.
Jennifer mentioned filters. Yes, you have to have a bit of a filter. You don't say to your nearest and dearest who's put on a bit of weight, "Hello, chubby, how are you doing?" Right? We don't do that.
Oh, I don't know. You've not met my family.
Oh well, if your family are like that, authentic and saying as it is, fair enough. I use a rather glib explanation. It's a question of mind over matter. You don't mind because their opinions, thoughts about you, or whatever it is, don't matter. So when you bear that in mind, I don't mind because that doesn't matter. Water off a duck's back, whatever it is. And if they continue to push your buttons and needle you, then there's probably a very robust comeback. But until that point, I said to somebody that you don't know what other people are going through. There may be
Yeah.
some reason for that person putting weight on or whatever. Give them a break. If you say, I knew you were going to say that, right, that's the worst thing because you anticipate it coming. No, it wasn't. And then the whole thing goes to that shit, right? And Christmas Day is ruined. So mind over matter just doesn't matter.
In some cases, though, people actually enjoy the arguments, don't they? When you say
Mhm.
Christmas is ruined or the day is ruined, depending on which celebration you're doing,
And
sometimes
when
that
you
that
say some
seems to
people,
be
Leslie, you mean you, don't you?
no, because I don't do it. I don't have anybody in the house.
So you
It's
argue
just
yourself?
me. This is
You argue
me.
with yourself?
Yeah. No, I don't. There's no point in arguing with myself because basically I've nothing to argue about. I'm not trying to ram turkey down my throat. I'm not trying to be cheerful because I have to be because somebody else is there. I don't have to worry about what I'm wearing. I don't have to worry about what time I get up in the morning or if the dishes are still in the sink, which they probably will be. And you know, I can have a curry or something else for my dinner. I don't have to worry about it.
And what I find interesting from that perspective is you then end up having conversations with people. So what did you do for Christmas? And you tell them that. And the amount of sympathy you get. Oh, that's such a shame. And you're sitting there going, that's what I wanted. I didn't want what you had. I wanted what I had. But again, it's that perception thing of, well, what a shame. Oh, we can't leave you on your own for Christmas.
Oh, I think I've got them trained now. I think I've got them well trained now. They don't do that with me. It's a
But
case
there
of,
are other
all
people
right,
in that situation
yeah,
that is a
they don't ask
constant.
me. They don't ask me anymore.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's such a great example, right? When somebody says, "Oh, that's such a shame," they're not meeting you where you're at. They're coming from where they're at and
Yeah.
what their expectation is of the situation, right? And so again, how do we handle those things? Find the pause, take the breath, step back and go, okay, whatever this is that's coming at me, This has to do with where they're at. This is not something that I have to respond to if I don't want to, right? But sometimes, like you said, sometimes we just want to fight. Sometimes, that pain body comes up and it wants to feed and it is rearing and ready, and somebody else gives an opportunity and off we go, right? But I think it's that intentionality and being very conscious and going, what is it that I actually want right now? And can I move into that, as I said, intentionally, as opposed to just getting pulled into it?
So what we're actually saying about holding steady has got to do with consciously being aware of what's going on, managing our own expectations, understanding that everything is subjective and that some people just don't do it the way that it's, and I'm going to do this, supposed to be.
And from that perspective, it's giving people permission to be the way they want to be. So allowing people to understand, you know what, I've seen that you've done a lot of change work on yourself. I'm really excited to hear all about it, rather than, why have you changed? Oh, I don't like that. So it's about both sides. So if you are the person that's not changed, to go out and actually embrace the other people and say, "Oh, tell me more. I'm really interested in what's going on for you this year." And being that open person rather than just saying, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a journey forward. We can only go forwards, or we can try and tread water and keep ourselves where we are in so many different ways. It just is so exhausting. I mean, come on, go with the flow, for crying out loud. I mean, just go there because you never know where you're going to be.
Maybe they don't want to, and that's okay too.
Oh, yeah, but they can tread water and then probably drown in it. So it's their problem.
To give them permission to do what they want to do, even if it is to tread water.
Yes, that's what I just said. You want to do that? Do that.
And don't tell them you're going to drown.
Oh, you take all my fun away. You really do.
Do.
Well, joking aside, it really has got to do with understanding that it's how we think, the thoughts that are in there that get attached to emotions that actually are coming in from the past most of the time. They're coming in from slights that were brought on by something or other that probably weren't even recognized at the time by the person who slighted you. By, they just doing their thing, like you said about have a nice day. Oh, and it's, why would I have a nice day? You don't know what happened. Well, that's the whole point. They don't know. They're just doing it by rote. If they don't do it, they might get sacked or told off or put on report or something. Who knows? Scrooge is alive and well and living loads of places. But it's one of those things that when we're doing this, when we're living, when we're being alive, it doesn't matter if we're born into something or we're with a whole load of family that we encouraged and made ourselves, our own tribe. And that can be the authentic thing. Sometimes we don't really want to be with family, but sometimes it's the only time that we actually connect with them. And it's the only time that you're expected to do that, which can cause a problem as well. So it just has a whole load of stuff that goes on with it. And sometimes you can't put icing on a turd and expect it to taste nice.
I was really worried as to where you were going to go with that.
But you can
And I went there.
sum it up by saying the old saying, live and let live. Do your
Yeah.
thing, be yourself, and let others be themselves. Right?
And for
And
goodness sake, think about the ecology of the planet when you're putting all these bloody lights outside.
well, their kids probably told them to do it because someone up and shit with the kids next door or whatever. Right? Just live
Sure,
and let
it's
live.
the kids.
It's a time for kids, isn't it? Or big
And
kids.
Or
big kids are just as allowed to do these things too.
I think it's more the parents with the inner child situation going
That's
on.
what I
Oh,
said, and the big kids are
Competitive.
allowed to do it just as much too.
there's a
Yeah.
whole other episode there.
Yes, there is. Which, might be the next one. So just think about it. When you're holding steady, there's a rudder involved. You kind of have to be able to move the rudder so that you can change a little bit of the course as you go through. There are ways of sticking, and we've just spoken a hell of a lot about all the ways that we can get stuck, all the ways that we can look at things and not see or hear or understand what the hell is going on with the other person. So take that on board if you can, unless you're being shanghaied by somebody else, and understand that there is a way through. You don't have to rise above. You can just sit there and let it go and just be yourself, because you're the one who has to live with you always. And if you're not yourself, well, you're just lying to yourself, really, aren't you? And then what are you going to do? Be that lie for the rest of your life? Because it would upset somebody's idea of who you are, who you could be, that you have purpose, that you have a thought in your head that's different to somebody else's. It's always good to explore. You just don't have to explode while you're doing it. So we'll see you next time.